The doorbell rang on Mother's Day morning, and I nearly dropped my coffee mug. No one visited me unannounced anymore, not since I'd turned 67 and my world had shrunk to the size of my deteriorating house, the church choir, and the group of women who'd somehow become my lifeline when my own blood had drifted away. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. I shuffled to the door in my house slippers, the left one held together with duct tape because new shoes weren't in the budget. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a tall figure. My heart did something stupid and hopeful before my brain could stop it. Marcus? I opened the door to find my son standing on my porch, my son who lived in California, who ran some tech company I didn't fully understand, who visited maybe once a year if I was lucky. "Baby, what are you doing here?" "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." He pulled me into a hug that smelled like expensive cologne and guilt. "Thought I'd surprise you." Behind him, a black Tesla sat in my driveway, gleaming and obscene next to Mrs. Patterson's rusty Buick across the street. My neighborhood didn't see cars like that. My neighborhood saw broken sidewalks and houses that needed paint and people who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't get ahead. "You should have called. I would have made something special," I started, but he waved me off. "We're taking you to brunch, the nice place downtown." He stepped inside, and I watched his eyes catalog everything I'd been trying to hide. The bucket in the corner catching drips from the leaking roof, the space heater I was still using in May because the furnace had died in January and I couldn't afford to fix it, the general shabbiness of a house that had been slowly falling apart around me for 3 years. I asked. "Clara's in the car. She's just finishing a call." He said it casually, like his wife hadn't ignored my last 4 phone calls, like she hadn't made it crystal clear at their wedding 7 years ago that she considered me an embarrassing inconvenience from Marcus's past he should have left behind. I looked down at my house dress, at my taped slipper. "I should change." "You look fine, Mom. Beautiful." He smiled that smile that used to work on me when he was 16 and wanted something. It still worked. God help me. "Just grab a sweater or something." Clara made reservations for 11. While I changed into my church dress, the navy one I'd owned for a decade, starting to shine at the elbows, I heard Marcus moving around downstairs, opening the refrigerator probably, seeing how empty it was, checking the thermostat, discovering I kept it at 58 to save money, noticing all the evidence of my poverty that I'd been too proud to name out loud. When I came back down, he was standing in the living room, staring at a photo on the wall, him at his college graduation, me beside him in a dress I'd sewn myself because I couldn't afford to buy one after paying his tuition. His father had left when Marcus was 3. It had been just us for so long, me working double shifts teaching music at the elementary school, him studying hard and getting scholarships, and making something of himself. I'd been so proud, was still proud, even though that boy in the photo had grown into a man who visited once a year and called twice a month and had somehow convinced himself that constituted a relationship. "You ready, Mom?" He turned, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or pity. I hated both equally. Clara was leaning against the Tesla when we came out, perfectly dressed in white linen that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She was beautiful in that sharp, calculated way. All angles and ambition. The kind of woman who treated kindness like weakness and saw people as either useful or obstacles. "Dorothy," she air-kissed near my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. "Happy Mother's Day. You look nice." The pause before nice said everything about what she actually thought. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd never set foot in. White tablecloths, waiters in suits, prices on the menu that made my stomach hurt. Marcus ordered for all of us. Champagne I didn't want. Appetizers with names I couldn't pronounce. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. "So, Mom?" he said after the champagne arrived, his tone carefully casual. "You're doing okay? Financially, I mean? You're happy with the arrangement?" I looked at him over my glass, confused. "What arrangement?" "You know." He gestured vaguely. "The money Clara sends you every month. The 10,000. It's enough, right? If you need more, just say so. I want to make sure you're comfortable." The champagne glass almost slipped from my hand. $10,000 every month. My mind spun, trying to make sense of words that couldn't possibly mean what they seemed to mean. "Marcus," my voice came out strange, strangled. I haven't." "Mom?" He leaned forward, concerned now. "The deposits. Clara handles them, but they should be hitting your account the first of every month. Have been for 3 years. Are you saying you haven't been getting them?" 3 years. $10,000 a month. I couldn't even do the math. That was a fortune. That was a new roof and a working furnace and not having to choose between medication and groceries. That was not borrowing money from Beatrice when the electric bill came due. I looked at Clara. She'd gone very still, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. Our eyes met, and I saw something in hers that made my blood run cold. Not surprise, not confusion, calculation. The words stuck in my throat, shame and confusion warring with something else, something that felt dangerously like understanding. Marcus, I haven't received any money. Not one deposit, not ever. The restaurant noise faded to background static. I watched my son's face change, confusion to disbelief, to the first stirrings of anger. Watched Clara set down her glass with careful precision. That's impossible, she said smoothly. I've been sending it personally, first of every month, like clockwork. Dorothy, are you sure you're checking the right account? Sometimes older people get confused. I'm not confused. My voice came out harder than I intended. And I'm not so old that I can't read a bank statement. There's been no money, Clara. Nothing. Marcus turned to his wife. How is that possible? You showed me the receipts, the confirmations. Obviously, there's been some kind of banking error. Clara's smile never wavered, but her eyes had gone flat and reptilian. I'll look into it immediately. Dorothy, I'm so sorry for any confusion. Confusion? The word burst out of me, sharp with 3 years of accumulated desperation. Marcus, I've been living on nothing. The roof leaks. The heat doesn't work. I've been borrowing money from my church friends just to eat some months. If you thought you were sending money, where the hell has it been going? The question hung in the air between us like an accusation. And in that moment, watching Clara's perfect mask slip just slightly, I knew. I knew exactly where it had been going. The ride back to my house was suffocating. Marcus drove in silence, jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. Clara sat in the passenger seat, phone out, fingers flying across the screen with what she claimed was urgent correspondence with the bank. I sat in the back like a child, my church dress suddenly feeling shabby and obvious in the Tesla's leather interior. Through the tinted windows, Detroit passed by, my city, my neighborhood, my life that looked even more worn and desperate from inside a car that cost more than I'd made in 5 years of teaching. I don't understand how this could happen, Marcus said finally, his voice tight and controlled. Clara, you've been handling this for 3 years. 3 years, and my mother's been… He couldn't finish the sentence. I'm investigating, Clara said without looking up from her phone. Obviously, there's been a massive banking error. These things happen more often than you'd think with older account holders. Stop calling me older, like it's a diagnosis, I snapped from the back seat. My account works fine for the Social Security that actually shows up. Clara's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn around. I'm just saying that sometimes these systems have glitches, especially with what? With poor people? With black women in deteriorating neighborhoods? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Say what you mean, Clara. Mom, Marcus's tone held a warning I didn't appreciate. Let's just get you home and figure this out. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, but I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I watched the back of Clara's head, her perfect blonde hair, her expensive clothes, and thought about 3 years of hell. 3 years of my friends, Beatrice, Lorraine, June, Patricia, pooling money to help me. 3 years of Beatrice, who'd been a CPA before retirement, quietly paying my electric bill some months. 3 years of telling myself my son was busy, successful, building his life in California, and that's why he didn't call much, didn't visit, didn't notice his mother was drowning, except he had thought he was helping, had thought he was sending enough money that I'd be comfortable, secure, taken care of, while I'd thought he'd forgotten I existed. And Clara had sat in the middle of that misunderstanding like a spider in a web, letting both of us believe our separate lies. When we pulled up to my house, Marcus helped me out of the car with a gentleness that felt like pity. I'm coming in. We need to look at your bank statements, figure out exactly what's been happening. I'll make tea, Clara offered, following us inside with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My kitchen was small, outdated, the linoleum peeling at the corners. I saw Clara's nose wrinkle slightly as she took in the ancient refrigerator, the stove with only 2 working burners, the general poverty of it all. She filled my kettle, newer than everything else because Beatrice had bought it for me last Christmas, and set it on the stove like she was performing an anthropological study of how poor people lived. Marcus sat at my kitchen table with my bank statements spread out in front of him. 3 years' worth, because I kept everything, because when you lived this close to the edge, you tracked every penny. His face got progressively darker as he flipped through pages of small deposits. My Social Security, the tiny pension from 30 years of teaching music to elementary school kids who couldn't afford private lessons, and equally small withdrawals for groceries, utilities, medications. Mom, his voice cracked, you've been living on $1,800 a month. That's below poverty level. It's what I have. I sat across from him, trying to maintain some dignity. I manage. You're borrowing money from friends. I can see the deposits here. Small amounts, different names. These are loans, aren't they? The shame burned in my chest. They're gifts from the choir, from women who care when... I stopped before I said something I couldn't take back. When I don't. He finished it for me, looked up with eyes that were too bright. Jesus, Mom. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call and say you needed help? You thought you were helping. The words came out flat, exhausted. Apparently. Clara brought tea in mismatched mugs. The nice ones I saved for company were chipped, and I saw her notice, saw the judgment flash across her face before she hid it behind concern. Did you find anything in the statements? Nothing. Marcus pushed them toward her. Not a single deposit that matches what I've been sending. Clara, show me your confirmations, the receipts you said you had. Something flickered in her eyes, too fast to name, but I saw it. Fear, maybe, or rage that she was being questioned. They're on my work computer, at home, in California. Obviously, I didn't bring them for a Mother's Day visit. You said you've been sending the money personally. From what account? Our joint account, the household one. She sipped her tea, perfectly composed. Marcus, I don't appreciate being interrogated like I'm some kind of criminal. I've been sending your mother money for 3 years because you asked me to. If there's been a banking error, that's not my fault. Then call the bank, right now. Get them on the phone and figure out where $360,000 has gone. The number hung in the air like an accusation. $360,000. Money that could have fixed my roof, my heat, my life. Money that could have meant I didn't have to borrow from friends who had barely more than I did. Money that had gone where? Clara pulled out her phone with exaggerated patience. Fine, though this is humiliating being treated like I'm lying. She dialed, put it on speaker, got transferred 3 times before reaching someone in the fraud department. I'm calling about recurring transfers that apparently haven't been reaching their destination, Clara explained, her voice honey-sweet and reasonable. $10,000 monthly from my account to... She rattled off my account number from memory. How did she have it memorized? The bank representative typed, made sympathetic noises, then said the words that confirmed what I already knew in my gut. Ma'am, I'm showing no transfer requests from your account to that destination. In fact, I'm showing no connection between these accounts at all. Clara's face went white, then red. That's impossible. I've been sending... There must be an error in your system. Our system shows what our system shows, ma'am. If you'd like to come into a branch with documentation... Clara hung up, looked at Marcus with wide eyes that were begging him to believe her, to take her side, to be the loyal husband instead of the abandoned son. They're wrong. Obviously, their records are incomplete. Marcus, you know I've been sending the money. You've seen the confirmations. Then show them to me. Now, pull them up on your phone, email them to yourself, something. I told you, they're on my work computer. Clara, Marcus's voice had gone dangerously quiet. My mother has been living in poverty for 3 years. 3 years while I thought she was comfortable, while I thought you were taking care of her. And now the bank is saying no transfers were ever made. So either there's a massive banking conspiracy or you've been lying to me. Which is it? The kettle started whistling. Clara had forgotten to turn it off. The sound was shrill, insistent, accusatory. No one moved to turn it off. Clara stood up, perfectly composed rage radiating from her. I don't have to sit here and be accused. I've done nothing but try to help your mother, and this is the gratitude I get? Being treated like a thief? Then prove you're not one, I said quietly. She turned on me, and for the first time I saw the real Clara behind the perfect mask. You've never liked me. From day one, you've been waiting for me to fail, to prove I wasn't good enough for your precious son. Well, I'm the one who convinced him to send you money in the first place. I'm the one who said, your mother's getting older. We should help her. And this is how you repay me? By asking where the money went? Marcus stood up, moving between us. Clara, just show me the proof. That's all. Show me one confirmation, one receipt, one single piece of evidence that you sent what you said you sent. The kettle screamed. The sound filled my small kitchen, filled the space where Clara's answer should have been. She grabbed her purse. I'm going back to the hotel. When you're ready to apologize for accusing me of God knows what, you know where to find me. She looked at Marcus, her expression hardening. You're choosing her over me. Again, just like always. I'm choosing the truth over lies. That's not the same thing. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. We listened to the Tesla start, tires squealing as she pulled away from my broken curb. Marcus finally turned off the kettle. The silence it left behind was somehow worse than the screaming had been. Mom. He sat back down, put his head in his hands. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to figure it out. I looked at my son, successful, wealthy, devastated, and felt the strangest mix of vindication and sadness. Marcus, baby, I think you already know what's happening. You just don't want to believe it yet. He looked up at me with eyes that were finally seeing clearly. She's been stealing from you, from us, this whole time. I think so. How do we prove it? I thought about Beatrice, my best friend since 3rd grade, who'd worked for 30 years as a CPA before retiring. Beatrice, who understood money and systems and how people hid things they didn't want found. I think, I said slowly, I need to call in some help, real help. The kind your wife doesn't know is coming. Marcus nodded. Do it, whatever you need. And Mom? His voice broke. I'm not going back to California until this is fixed. Until you're fixed. I should have been here. I should have been paying attention. You should have, I agreed, because it was true, and we both needed to hear it. But you're here now. That's a start. After he left for his hotel, couldn't stay with Clara, couldn't stomach it, I called Beatrice. Dorothy, everything okay? No, I said, but it's about to be. Can you come over? I need your expertise, and maybe Lorraine's too. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Should I bring the ledger? Beatrice always kept a ledger of the money she'd lent me. Insisted on it, even though I'd told her not to worry about repayment. I'd been embarrassed by it, by the documentation of my dependence. Now I understood it might be exactly what I needed. Yes, I said, bring everything. It's time to stop being grateful for scraps and start demanding what's mine. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen that Clara had looked at with such disdain, and I smiled. She'd underestimated me. Underestimated what a poor black woman with smart friends could do when pushed too far. That was going to be her first mistake. I was about to make sure it was her last. Beatrice arrived first, carrying her famous leather-bound ledger like it was holy scripture. In a way, it was a testament to friendship that kept records not out of mistrust, but out of love, documenting every time my church family had caught me before I hit bottom. She was 72, round and formidable, with silver hair she wore in a crown of braids and eyes that could calculate compound interest in her sleep. 40 years as a CPA had taught her that numbers never lied, even when people did. Tell me everything, she said, settling her considerable weight into my kitchen chair. And don't leave out a single detail, Dorothy Hayes, or I swear I'll make you regret it. So I did. Told her about Marcus's surprise visit, about the $10,000 a month I'd supposedly been receiving, about Clara's performance of shock and the bank's cold confirmation that no transfers had ever been made. Beatrice's face got darker with each sentence. When I finished, she was practically vibrating with rage. That calculating little... She stopped herself, remembered we were church ladies. Lorraine needs to hear this. And June. And Patricia. This isn't just about you anymore, Dorothy. This is about what that woman has been doing while we scrape together money to keep you fed. The guilt hit me fresh. I never wanted to be a burden. Hush. You're not a burden, you're family. But if your son has been sending money that we could have been using elsewhere, money that woman has been stealing, then we have a right to know. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling an emergency choir meeting. Your house, 1 hour. We're going to figure out exactly what Clara has been doing, and then we're going to make her pay for it. Within an hour, my small living room was packed with 6 women who'd kept me alive for 3 years. Beatrice, with her ledger. Lorraine, 75 and sharp as a tack, who'd worked in banking before retirement. June, 68, a paralegal who knew her way around legal documents. Patricia, 70, a former teacher like me who'd helped me navigate the social services bureaucracy when I'd been too proud to go alone. Rosa, 65, who'd worked in IT and understood computers in ways that made my head spin. And Marjorie, the youngest at 62, who'd been a social worker and understood how people manipulated systems. My kitchen table became a war room. Show us your statements, Lorraine said, pulling reading glasses from her purse. All of them. And Beatrice, let's see that ledger. For the next 2 hours, we worked like the team we were. Beatrice's ledger showed every loan, 23 in 3 years, ranging from $50 to $500, totaling just over $8,000. My bank statements showed those deposits alongside Social Security and my pension. And they showed something else too, once Lorraine started really looking. Dorothy, do you know a company called Serenity Wellness Spa? She pointed to a line item from 18 months ago. You have a charge here for $800. I've never been to a spa in my life. Must be fraud. It's fraud, all right, Rosa said. leaning over with her laptop. But not the kind you think. Look, she'd pulled up something on the screen. Serenity Wellness Spa, located in Palo Alto, California. That's near San Jose, where your son lives, right? My stomach dropped. Yes, and here, June pointed to another statement. Bergdorf Goodman, $1,500. Dorothy, you shop at Bergdorf Goodman? I don't even know what that is. It's where rich white ladies buy purses that cost more than your car used to, Marjorie said grimly. And it's in New York. You been to New York recently? I hadn't been anywhere except church and the grocery store for 3 years. Rosa's fingers flew across her keyboard. I'm logged into a database. Don't ask, you don't want to know, that tracks credit card fraud. Give me your card numbers. I did. She typed, waited, then let out a low whistle. Dorothy, you have $17,000 in fraudulent charges over the past 3 years, all from your account, all from places you've never been, for things you'd never buy. How is that possible? I never gave anyone my information. Who has access to your banking details? Lorraine asked. Who did you give your account number to? The answer hit me like cold water. Clara? She needed it to set up the transfers. Marcus gave me her email and said to send her my information so she could handle everything. 6 women stared at me with identical expressions of fury. She didn't just not send the money, Beatrice said slowly. She took money out, used your account information to buy herself luxury goods while you borrowed from friends to keep the lights on. Can we prove it? I heard myself ask. I mean, really prove it? In a way that will stand up if... I couldn't finish the sentence. If Marcus didn't believe me, if he chose his wife over his mother, again. June pulled out her phone. I have a friend who's a forensic accountant, specializes in this kind of fraud. She owes me a favor. I helped her daughter with custody issues last year. Let me make a call. While June stepped into the kitchen to call her friend, the rest of us kept digging. Rosa found more charges. Hotels in Miami, restaurants in Los Angeles, clothing boutiques in San Francisco, all from my account, all places I'd never been. Patricia looked up from her notes. The timeline is interesting. The fraudulent charges started about 6 months after Clara supposedly started sending you money. Like she was testing it first, making sure Marcus wasn't paying attention, then got bolder. And she scattered them, Rosa added. 1 or 2 charges a month, mixed in with your regular expenses. Never enough in one place to trigger fraud alerts from the bank. This was calculated. Methodical. She knew exactly what she was doing. June came back, her face grim but satisfied. My friend can see us tomorrow morning. Bring all your documentation, statements, the ledger, everything. She says, if it's as bad as it sounds, she can build a case that will not only get your money back, but potentially result in criminal charges. Criminal charges. My daughter-in-law, the mother of the grandchildren I'd never met because Clara had made sure I was always too inconvenient to visit. How much? I asked quietly. Total. How much has she stolen? Lorraine and Beatrice looked at each other, then at me. Based on what we're seeing, the money Marcus thought he was sending, plus the fraudulent charges from your account, we're looking at close to $400,000 over 3 years. The number was incomprehensible. I couldn't even picture that much money. That was 8 years of my teacher's pension. That was a new house. That was security and dignity and everything I'd been surviving without while Clara bought handbags and spa treatments. I'm going to be sick, I said, and Marjorie got me to the bathroom just in time. When I came back, shaky and pale, 6 women looked at me with love and fury in equal measure. We're with you, Beatrice said. Whatever happens next, however this goes down, you're not alone in this. You never were, but especially not now. Marcus needs to know, Lorraine added. Everything. Not just that the money didn't reach you, but what Clara was actually doing with it. I thought about my son, about the way he'd looked at those bank statements, about the crack in his voice when he'd realized I'd been living in poverty while he thought I was comfortable, about how much worse it would be when he learned his wife hadn't just failed to help. She'd actively stolen from his mother. Call him, Patricia said, reading my hesitation. Tonight, show him what we've found. Let him make the choice about what to do with the truth. So I did. Called Marcus at his hotel and asked him to come back over. Told him I had more information, that my friends had helped me figure some things out. He arrived 30 minutes later, looking exhausted and older than his 42 years. Found my living room full of elderly black women with laptops and ledgers and the kind of righteous anger that had toppled bigger obstacles than one lying white woman. Mom, what's going on? I handed him the printouts Rosa had made. These are charges on my account from the past 3 years. Charges I didn't make, places I've never been, things I'd never buy. He looked through them, confusion giving way to understanding, giving way to rage. These are all Clara's. I recognize them. The spa she goes to, the stores she shops at, the hotels she stays at when she travels for work. He looked up at me. She's been using your account? Your information? Worse, Beatrice said, stepping forward with her ledger. She's been using it while you thought you were sending Dorothy $10,000 a month, which means she was taking from both ends, stealing what you meant for your mother and stealing directly from Dorothy's poverty-level income to fund her luxury lifestyle. Marcus sat down hard on my worn couch. How much? $400,000, give or take, Lorraine said. And we have a forensic accountant ready to document all of it. Question is, what do you want to do about it? I watched my son wrestle with the truth, watched him choose between the life he'd built with Clara and the mother he'd been neglecting, watched him grow up 20 years in 20 seconds. I want to destroy her, he said finally. I want her to pay for every dollar, every lie, every moment my mother suffered while she bought handbags with stolen money. He looked at me. If you'll let me. If it's not too late. I looked around at my friends, my real family. The women who'd proven love wasn't about blood or obligation, but about showing up when it mattered. It's not too late, I said. But we do this right. We do this so she can never hurt anyone else the way she hurt us. Then let's begin, June said, pulling out her paralegal notepad. Step 1, document everything. Step 2, meet with the forensic accountant. Step 3, she smiled, and it wasn't kind. Step 3, we introduce Clara to consequences. Marcus stayed until midnight, going through every document, asking questions, building the case against his own wife. At some point he started crying, quiet, shoulder-shaking sobs that broke my heart even as I held him. I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything, for not paying attention, for trusting her, for letting you suffer. Hush now. I held my son like I had when he was small and the world was cruel. You didn't know, but you know now. That's what matters. After everyone left, I sat alone in my house that Clara had looked at with such contempt. And I thought about justice, not revenge. Revenge was beneath us, but justice, the kind that came with documentation and lawyers and the slow, inexorable grinding of systems that protected the vulnerable from predators who thought they were too smart to get caught. Clara had made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated poor black women with sharp minds and long memories. Tomorrow she'd start learning just how expensive that mistake was going to be. The forensic accountant's office was in a high-rise downtown that made me feel small and out of place. But Beatrice squeezed my hand as we entered, and Marcus walked beside me with the kind of protective energy I hadn't felt from him in years. And I remembered I wasn't alone in this. June's friend turned out to be a black woman named Simone Trask, late 50s, impeccably dressed, with a reputation for taking down white-collar criminals that had earned her both respect and enemies. She decorated her office with diplomas and commendations, but also with photos of her kids and grandkids, a reminder that she understood family in ways Clara never would. Mrs. Hayes, she shook my hand firmly. I've reviewed the preliminary documents June sent over. What your daughter-in-law has done is textbook financial elder abuse, compounded by fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. We're not talking misdemeanor territory here. We're talking federal crimes. The words should have felt satisfying. Instead, they felt heavy. This was my son's wife, the mother of grandchildren I'd only seen in photos. Family, however poisonous. But Marcus sat beside me with his jaw set, and when Simone asked, "Are you prepared to pursue this fully?" he answered before I could. Yes, whatever it takes. For the next 3 hours, we went through everything. Simone photographed documents, input data into specialized software, asked questions that seemed random but weren't. Beatrice provided her ledger. Rosa had brought a USB drive with digital copies of everything she'd found. Lorraine explained the banking irregularities she'd noticed. Simone worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, but still cared about number 1001. Here's what I can tell you already, she said finally, spinning her laptop around to show us a spreadsheet that made my head hurt. Clara set up a shell company 18 months ago, Serenity Wellness Consulting LLC. Sounds legitimate, like a wellness coaching business. In reality, it's a pass-through she used to move money around and obscure the paper trail. Can you prove it's hers? Marcus asked. She's listed as the registered agent and sole employee. And look at the business address, Simone pointed. It's your home address in Palo Alto, your actual house, Marcus. I watched my son's face cycle through emotions, disbelief, rage, devastation. She was running a fraud operation out of our house while I was at work, while I thought she was building her law career. About that, Simone said carefully. When did Clara leave her law firm? She didn't. She's a partner at Morrison & Rhodes. Why? Simone pulled up something else on her screen. Because according to the California State Bar, Clara's license has been inactive for 2 years. She's not practicing law, Hasn't been since shortly after she started stealing from your mother. The room went silent, except for the hum of Simone's computer. That's impossible, Marcus said finally. She goes to work every day. She bills clients. I've seen her working late, taking calls. Where does her paycheck get deposited? Lorraine asked quietly. Marcus pulled out his phone, logged into their banking app. I watched his face as he navigated to their account history, watched him realize something that made his skin go gray. There's no paycheck. There hasn't been in 2 years. I never noticed because we keep separate accounts for our personal spending, only share the household account. I just assumed. He looked up at Simone. What has she been doing every day when she leaves the house? Based on the charges from your mother's account? Shopping? Spa days? Lunch at expensive restaurants? Living the life of a wealthy woman while your mother boiled water for tea because she couldn't afford coffee? Simone's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held fury. She's been committing fraud for so long and so successfully that she probably stopped seeing it as fraud. In her mind, she deserved this money. Deserved it more than Dorothy did. Can we get it back? I asked. All of it? Most of it. She's spent a significant amount, but she also has assets purchased with the stolen money. We can seize those, force liquidation, pursue civil and criminal remedies. Simone leaned forward. But here's what you need to understand, Mrs. Hayes. Once we start this process, there's no taking it back. Clara will be arrested. She'll face charges that could put her in prison for 5 to 10 years. Your son's marriage will definitely end. Any social standing she has will be destroyed. Are you prepared for that? For what it will do to your family? I thought about 3 years of cold winters because I couldn't afford heat, about borrowing money from Beatrice for medicine, about the shame of being 67 years old and dependent on the charity of friends, about Clara's face in my kitchen, calling me older, like it was a disease, looking at my poverty with disgust while she'd been causing it. I'm prepared, I said. She needs to face consequences, not just for what she did to me, but to make sure she never does it to anyone else. Marcus reached for my hand. I'll handle the divorce. And Mom, whatever you get back, it's yours. All of it. No arguing. We'll see about that, I said, because I'd already decided that any money recovered would be split. Part for me, yes, but part for a community fund to help other elderly people facing financial abuse. Clara had stolen from me, but she'd also stolen from Beatrice and Lorraine and June and Patricia, who'd scraped together money for someone they thought had nothing, not knowing she should have had everything. That debt needed paying forward, not just back. Simone printed documents, had us sign things, explained processes that sounded like a foreign language. By the time we left her office, it was after 2 p.m, and my head was spinning. What happens now? I asked, as we stood on the sidewalk, Detroit traffic rushing past. Now I compile the evidence into a formal complaint and file it with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Simone said. They'll open an investigation. Probably take 4 to 6 weeks before they move on it. But when they do, it'll be fast. Clara will be arrested, arraigned, bail set. Marcus, you should talk to a divorce attorney immediately. And Dorothy, she looked at me with something like respect. Get ready for this to get ugly. Clara will fight. She'll lie, manipulate, try to turn Marcus against you. Women like her always do when they're cornered. But Beatrice squeezed my shoulder and said, she can try. But she's never faced the full force of angry church ladies with receipts before. She has no idea what's coming. We went to lunch, me, Marcus, and my church family, at a soul food place that Clara would have turned her nose up at. Ate fried chicken and collard greens and sweet potato pie, while Marcus asked questions about my life, about how I'd survived, about the women who'd caught me when he hadn't been there. How much did you all lend her? He asked Beatrice. Total. About $8,000 over 3 years, she said. Between the 6 of us, not counting the times we paid bills directly, bought groceries, covered medications. If you count all of that, probably closer to 15. Marcus pulled out his phone, tapped at his banking app. I'm sending each of you $25,000. It's not enough for what you did, but, boy, put that phone away, Beatrice said sharply. We didn't help Dorothy for money. We helped her because that's what family does. You're more family to her than I've been, Marcus said quietly. Please, let me do this. Let me pay back even a fraction of what I owe you for taking care of my mother when I failed to. Lorraine and June and Patricia and Rosa exchanged looks. Finally, Lorraine said, half. We take half and donate half to Dorothy's community fund, the one she's going to start for other elderly folks who need help. Deal? Marcus smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since he'd arrived. Deal. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Dorothy Hayes? Speaking. This is Agent Jennifer Morrison with the FBI. Simone Trask contacted us about a fraud case involving you. I'm calling to let you know we're expediting the investigation. We've actually been watching Clara Hayes for 6 months on an unrelated matter. Suspicious spending patterns flagged in our systems. Your case gives us the evidence we needed to move forward. We'll be executing a search warrant tomorrow morning. I wanted to give you advance notice. My heart pounded. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, 8 a.m., at her residence in Palo Alto. Mrs. Hayes, is your son with you? Marcus Hayes? I handed the phone to Marcus, watched him listen, watched his face change as he understood what was coming. When he hung up, he looked at me with something like awe. Mom, they're arresting her tomorrow. This is really happening. Do you want to be there? I asked. When they do it? He thought about it, then shook his head. No, I want to be here, with you, meeting with my lawyer, starting divorce proceedings, beginning to fix what I broke. He reached across the table, took both my hands. I'm so sorry for all of it, for not being the son you deserved. You're here now, I said, and meant it. That's what matters. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about tomorrow, about Clara waking up in her comfortable house, going about her morning routine, and then hearing the doorbell, opening it to FBI agents with a warrant and handcuffs. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, joy at the comeuppance. Instead, I mostly felt tired and sad for my son, who'd have to rebuild his life from rubble, and grateful for 6 women who'd proven that family wasn't about blood, but about showing up. But underneath all of that, yes, there was a small flame of satisfaction. Justice wasn't revenge, but it was still sweet. Tomorrow, Clara would learn that poor didn't mean powerless, that elderly didn't mean stupid, that black women with sharp minds and righteous anger were a force of nature she should have respected instead of exploited. Tomorrow, the bill came due. I fell asleep easier than I had in 3 years. The call came at 8:47 a.m. Marcus, from the hotel, his voice shaking. It's done. They just called me. She's been arrested. They found everything, Mom. Everything. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee I'd actually bought myself. Marcus had taken me grocery shopping yesterday, filled my cabinets with food I hadn't had to borrow money for, and tried to process it. Clara, in handcuffs. Clara, who'd looked at my poverty with disgust while causing it, now facing the consequences. How did she react? I asked, then immediately regretted it. I didn't want to know. Didn't want to picture my son's wife, however terrible, being led away by federal agents. I don't know. I wasn't there. They just called to notify me as her spouse. He exhaled slowly. Her lawyer already called 3 times. Apparently she's demanding I bail her out. $50,000. Are you going to? Silence. Long enough that I could hear him wrestling with loyalty and anger and the death of a marriage. No. I talked to my lawyer. He says letting her sit in county for a few days might actually help the divorce. Shows I'm serious, that I'm not going to enable her anymore. Is that awful? That I'm going to leave my wife in jail? She's not your wife anymore, I said gently. Not really. That relationship died the first time she stole from your mother. You just didn't know it yet. We talked for a few more minutes before he had to go, meeting with his lawyer, starting divorce proceedings, beginning the legal dismantling of 7 years of marriage. After we hung up, I sat with my cooling coffee and thought about consequences. Clara would be arraigned this afternoon, bail hearing tomorrow, then the slow grind of the justice system, months of lawyers and evidence, and the public exposure of every lie she'd told. Part of me felt guilty for starting this avalanche, but a larger part remembered cold winters and borrowed money and the shame of being 67 and dependent on charity that shouldn't have been necessary. Beatrice called at 9. You see the news? What news? Turn on Channel 4. I found my remote, clicked on the small TV I'd owned for 15 years. The local news was covering a story. Silicon Valley lawyer arrested for elder financial abuse. There was Clara's photo, professional headshot, blonde and polished and perfect. And there was the story. 400,000 stolen, shell companies, identity theft, a victim who'd been living in poverty while the accused spent lavishly. They didn't name me, thank God, but they named Clara. Showed her being led from her house in handcuffs, her perfect face twisted with rage and humiliation. My phone started ringing. Margaret from church, then Rosa, then people I hadn't talked to in months, all calling to ask if I'd seen, if it was true, if I was okay. By noon, the story had gone regional. By 3, it had been picked up by national outlets. High society lawyer's secret, stealing from elderly mother-in-law. The narrative was perfect for the news cycle. Wealthy white woman preying on poor black elderly woman living large while her victims suffered. I hated it. Hated being poor black elderly woman. Hated having my poverty publicized. Hated being a story instead of a person. but I also recognized the power of it. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every elderly person who'd been financially abused, every vulnerable victim who'd been told they were wrong or confused or making it up. June called at 4. Dorothy, I've gotten 7 calls today from people who saw the news and think they're experiencing something similar. Financial abuse by family members, caregivers, people they trusted. I think we need to talk about that community fund sooner rather than later. So we did. That evening, my living room filled again with my church family, but this time with a purpose beyond catching me. We'd all seen the news, all fielded calls from people who suddenly realized they or someone they loved might be victims too. We need a helpline, Patricia said. A place people can call to get guidance, resources, someone to believe them, and a legal fund, June added. Most people can't afford forensic accountants and lawyers. We need to help them access those services. And education, Marjorie said. We need to teach people the warning signs, how to protect themselves, how to spot manipulation before it destroys their lives. I listened to these women, my family, my lifeline, transform my personal tragedy into communal action, and felt something shift in my chest, from victim to survivor to advocate, from humiliation to purpose. The fund needs a name, Beatrice said, something that honors what we built together. We all looked at each other. Then Lorraine said, the Dorothy Hayes Justice Fund, for financial abuse survivors and the communities that catch them. My eyes burned. You can't name it after me. I didn't. You survived, Rosa said firmly. You spoke up. You demanded justice when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That deserves recognition. So it was decided. The Dorothy Hayes Justice Fund, seeded with money Marcus had already committed, and the portion of recovered funds I'd decided to donate. Not just financial support, but legal advocacy, education, community building. From Clara's theft, something good would grow. That felt like justice too. Marcus came by that evening, looking exhausted. Arraignment was this afternoon. She pled not guilty, which was expected. Bail was set at $250,000. She can't make it. Her assets are frozen, her accounts seized. Her parents are trying to raise the money, but he sat on my couch, put his head in his hands. She's going to be in jail for a while. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Relieved. Is that terrible? It's honest. I sat beside him. Marcus, you're allowed to be relieved that a woman who betrayed you is facing consequences. That doesn't make you a bad person. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he said, I talked to Simone today. They're finding more. Accounts Clara had that I didn't know about. Credit cards in my name she'd opened without telling me. The fraud goes deeper than we thought. Might be closer to $500,000 total. The number was incomprehensible. Where did it all go? Shopping, travel, maintaining an image of wealth she didn't actually have. Turns out her law career had been struggling for a while before she stopped practicing. She'd lost clients, had complaints filed against her, was facing potential disbarment. Rather than tell me, she apparently decided to just steal. From you, from me, from credit companies. Like that was a reasonable solution. Did you know any of it? That she was struggling? He shook his head. I was building my company, working 80-hour weeks. I thought she was doing the same with her career. I thought we were partners building parallel successes. He laughed bitterly. Turns out I don't know how to pick partners. In business or marriage. You picked me, I said softly. As a mother, that worked out okay. He looked at me, eyes red. Did it? Because I abandoned you, Mom, for 3 years. While I thought Clara was taking care of you, I stopped checking in, stopped visiting, stopped being a son. I picked a woman who told me pretty lies over a mother who would have told me hard truths. But you came back. When you learned the truth, you believed me. You chose right when it mattered. I took his hand. That counts for something. Does it count enough? That's up to you. You can let this define you, or you can let it redirect you. Either way, you're my son. I love you. That doesn't change because you made mistakes. He started crying then, deep, shoulder-shaking sobs that he'd probably been holding since Mother's Day. I held him like I had when he was small, and the world had hurt him, and I thought about the strange mercy of rock bottom. Sometimes you had to lose everything to figure out what actually mattered. After he left, I sat with the TV on mute, watching footage of Clara's arrest play on repeat. She looked smaller in the jumpsuit, her perfect hair messy, her face bare of makeup. Human, finally. Not the polished weapon she'd wielded against me, but just a woman who'd made catastrophically bad choices. I should have hated her. Part of me did. But a larger part just felt tired of hating, tired of anger, ready to be done with this chapter and move into whatever came next. My phone buzzed. Text from Simone. Prosecutors want to meet with you next week. building the case. They're talking about offering a plea deal, 15 years reduced to 7 if she pleads guilty and agrees to full restitution. Thoughts? 7 years. Clara would be almost 50 when she got out. Her legal career over, her marriage destroyed, her reputation in ashes. I typed back, if she admits it, if she faces what she did publicly and completely, then yes, justice, not revenge. Simone's response, understood. I'll make sure that's part of any deal. Full admission, public apology, complete financial disclosure. She doesn't get to minimize or excuse. Good, because that was the part that mattered most. Not the jail time, but the accountability, the public acknowledgement that she'd been wrong, cruel, criminal, that I'd been telling the truth. That night, I slept the sleep of someone who'd faced the monster and lived. Tomorrow, there would be more. Prosecutors, statements, the slow machinery of justice grinding forward. But tonight, I could rest. Clara was in jail. My son was choosing right. My friends were turning tragedy into purpose. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd fought back. And that was enough. The federal prosecutor's office was everything Clara's arrested mugshot wasn't. Polished, powerful, intimidating. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Martinez led me into a conference room where 3 other lawyers waited, all of them younger than Marcus, all of them treating me with the careful respect people used for valuable witnesses who might also be fragile. I wasn't fragile, not anymore. Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming in. Jennifer was Latina, mid-30s, with the kind of sharp intelligence that reminded me of Beatrice. We're building the case against Clara Hayes for wire fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. Your testimony will be crucial. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. The phone call on Mother's Day, Clara's deflection about banking errors, the discovered charges, the forensic accounting, every detail of 3 years of calculated theft. They recorded it all, asked questions that made me relive moments I'd have rather forgotten. How did it feel when Marcus asked about the money? How did Clara react when confronted? What made you suspect she was lying? The way she looked at my house, I said finally, like it disgusted her, like I disgusted her. But there was something else too, satisfaction. She'd been keeping me poor on purpose, and part of her enjoyed it, enjoyed having power over me, over my son. That's when I knew it wasn't just negligence or banking errors. It was malice. Jennifer made notes. That's important. Proving intent is crucial for the fraud charges. If she just failed to send the money, that's civil. But actively stealing while pretending to help? That's criminal. What kind of sentence is she looking at? I asked. If convicted on all counts, 20 to 30 years federal time. But Jennifer exchanged glances with her colleagues. Her lawyer approached us yesterday about a plea deal. She's willing to admit to everything. Full confession, complete financial disclosure, cooperation with asset recovery in exchange for a reduced sentence. 7 years, eligible for parole after 5. 7 years instead of 30. It felt light for what she'd done, for the magnitude of the theft and betrayal. But it also meant I wouldn't have to testify at trial, wouldn't have to face Clara in court while she lied and deflected and tried to destroy me publicly. What do you think I should do? I asked. That's not our decision, Mrs. Hayes. We can proceed to trial if you want her to face maximum consequences. Or we can accept the plea if you want guaranteed conviction and quicker restitution. There's no wrong answer. I thought about it. About justice versus revenge. About closure versus prolonged trauma. About 7 years of Clara in federal prison, becoming a convicted felon, losing everything she'd built on stolen foundations. I want the plea, I said finally, but with conditions. She has to allocate, that's the right term, right? Fully admit what she did in open court. And part of her sentence has to include community service after release, working with financial abuse prevention programs. I want her to face what she did, but I also want her to do something with that facing, besides just rot in prison. Jennifer smiled. You're a more generous woman than I'd be in your position. I'm a tired woman who wants to move forward, not spend the next 3 years trapped in litigation. I met her eyes. But make no mistake, I want her to pay, fully, financially and otherwise. They drafted the plea agreement over the next week. Clara would plead guilty to wire fraud and elder abuse. 7 years federal prison, 3 years supervised release, full restitution of all stolen funds, plus penalties and interest, 500 hours of community service post-release, working with elder advocacy organizations, and public allocution, where she'd have to admit every detail of her crimes in open court. The allocution was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Marcus asked if I wanted him there. I said yes. The day came cold and gray, Detroit weather matching my mood. The courthouse downtown was busy with the usual mix of lawyers and defendants and people whose lives were intersecting with justice in ways both fair and unfair. Clara was already there when we arrived, sitting with her lawyer at the defense table. She'd lost weight. Jail would do that, and the orange jumpsuit made her look washed out and small. When she saw Marcus, something flickered across her face. Hope, maybe, or calculation, trying one last time to find the angle that would save her. He looked at her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd always been, and he was only now seeing clearly. The judge, an older black woman named Constance Williams, who'd reportedly never met a white-collar criminal she didn't sentence to the maximum, took her seat and reviewed the plea agreement with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Mrs. Hayes, you understand you're pleading guilty to 2 federal felonies? That you're waiving your right to trial? That this conviction will follow you for the rest of your life? Yes, Your Honor. Clara's voice was small, nothing like the confident tone she'd used in my kitchen when calling me confused. And you understand that part of this plea agreement requires full allocution? That means you're going to tell this court, in your own words, exactly what you did. No minimizing, no excusing, complete truth. Can you do that? Clara glanced at her lawyer, who nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Then proceed. Clara stood, and for a moment I thought she might refuse, might stick to the lies even now, even with everything lost. But then she started talking. For 3 years, I stole money from my mother-in-law, Dorothy Hayes. Her voice was flat, defeated. My husband, Marcus, had asked me to send her $10,000 per month to help with living expenses. Instead of sending the money, I deposited it into accounts I controlled. I also used Dorothy's banking information to make fraudulent charges on her account, purchases for myself, my lifestyle, maintaining an image of wealth I didn't actually have. She outlined it all. The shell company, the credit cards opened in Marcus's name, the false receipts she'd shown him to prove transfers that never happened, the way she'd deliberately isolated him from his mother to prevent him from discovering the truth. I told Dorothy's son that she was too proud to ask for help, that it was better to just send money and not make her feel like charity. I told Dorothy that Marcus was too busy to visit, that he'd asked me to handle family obligations so he could focus on work. I kept them apart, so neither would discover what I was doing. My hands clenched in my lap. Hearing it laid out like that, the calculated manipulation, the methodical cruelty, was harder than I'd expected. I knew Dorothy was struggling. I knew she was borrowing money from friends, living in poverty, going without heat and adequate food. I knew, and I didn't care. In fact, she stopped, swallowed. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having power over her, over my husband, over the situation. I felt like I deserved the money more than she did, like her poverty was somehow proof that I'd been right to take it. The courtroom was silent, except for her voice, documenting her own monstrosity. I'm guilty of all of it. The fraud, the theft, the elder abuse. I hurt Dorothy Hayes deliberately and repeatedly for 3 years. I destroyed her sense of security, her relationship with her son, her dignity, and I did it for designer handbags and spa treatments and maintaining a lifestyle I couldn't afford. She sat down. Her lawyer looked relieved it was over. The prosecutor looked satisfied. Judge Williams looked at Clara with the expression of someone who'd seen every kind of human failure and was still somehow disappointed by this one. Mrs. Hayes, I've reviewed the evidence in this case extensively. I've seen the financial records, the statements from the victim, the documentation of your systematic abuse of a vulnerable elderly woman. The judge's voice was cold. This plea agreement calls for 7 years. The prosecution and defense have agreed, but I want you to understand something. You're getting mercy you don't deserve. The only reason I'm accepting this plea is because Mrs. Dorothy Hayes asked me to, because she's a better person than you are. Clara didn't look at me. Couldn't. Probably. 7 years federal prison, eligible for parole after 5 with good behavior, 3 years supervised release, full restitution of $463,000 plus penalties and interest, total amount of $600,000 to be paid through wage garnishment and asset seizure, 500 hours community service post-release. And Mrs. Hayes? The judge looked at Clara hard. If you violate any condition of your release, if you so much as miss a parole meeting, I will personally see to it that you serve every day of the maximum sentence you could have faced. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor. Then we're done. Bailiff, remand the defendant. Just like that, it was over. Clara was led away in handcuffs, back to county jail where she'd wait for transfer to federal prison. Marcus sat beside me, his hand finding mine, and and we watched his wife, his ex-wife, papers had been filed last week, disappear through a door that would keep her away from the world for 7 years. Outside, on the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed. The story had gotten bigger. Tech CEO's wife stole from elderly mother-in-law had become a national talking point about elder abuse, family dynamics, the way wealth and poverty could exist side by side and invisible to each other. Jennifer had coached me on what to say. Keep it brief, focus on the issue beyond yourself, plug the fund we were building. How do you feel about the sentence? A reporter called out. I feel like justice was served, I said carefully. But more important than one person's sentence is the larger issue. Financial abuse of elderly people is rampant. It happens in families, by caregivers, by people trusted to help. We need better protections, better resources, better education. That's why I'm starting the Dorothy Hayes Justice Fund, to help other victims get the support I was lucky enough to have through my community. More questions, but Marcus and I pushed through to the car he'd rented, drove away from the courthouse toward my house, toward the life I was rebuilding piece by piece. Thank you, Marcus said finally, for not making her go to trial, for being merciful when she didn't deserve it. I didn't do it for her, I said. I did it for me, for us, so we could move forward instead of being trapped in that courtroom for months. We drove in silence for a while. Then, Mom, I'm moving back to Detroit, permanently. Selling the California house, relocating the company headquarters. I can't be in that house anymore, in that life. I need to start over. You don't have to do that for me. I'm not. I'm doing it for me, because I've spent 10 years building a company and neglecting everything else, and I'm done. I want to be close to family, real family, the kind that shows up. I want to be the son you deserved from the beginning. I reached over, squeezed his hand, then welcome home, baby. That night, my church family came over to celebrate the end of this chapter. We ate and laughed and toasted with sparkling cider because Beatrice said champagne at our age was asking for a headache. Simone called to say asset recovery was proceeding. Clara's house would be sold, her luxury goods auctioned, her accounts drained. The money would come back, slowly, but it would come. And in 6 months, the Dorothy Hayes Justice Fund would officially launch with enough money to help dozens of elderly abuse victims access legal services, forensic accounting, advocacy. From Clara's crime, something good had grown. That felt like more justice than any sentence could provide. I fell asleep that night in my house that Marcus had already started fixing. New furnace installed yesterday. Roofers coming next week. Fell asleep knowing Clara was in federal custody, knowing Marcus was choosing right, knowing 6 women had proven that family wasn't blood, but presence. Justice had been served. Not perfectly. Justice never was, but completely enough that I could finally rest. The money that never came had come back, but more valuable than the money was what came with it. My dignity, my son, my sense that the world could still be fair when good people demanded it be. That was worth more than Clara could ever have stolen. 3 months after Clara's sentencing, my house was unrecognizable. New roof, new furnace, fresh paint in colors I'd chosen, warm sage for the living room, deep blue for my bedroom, sunny yellow for the kitchen. Marcus had wanted to buy me something bigger, newer, in a better neighborhood. I'd refused. This house is mine, I'd told him. Paid off, full of memories, good and bad. I'm not starting over somewhere else. I'm reclaiming what's always been mine. So instead of a new house, he'd funded a complete renovation. Modern kitchen with appliances that actually worked. Updated bathroom with a walk-in shower and safety rails that didn't make me feel old, just smart. New windows that kept the heat in. Hardwood floors refinished until they gleamed. Mrs. Patterson from across the street had cried when she saw it. Dorothy, it's beautiful. You deserve this. I was learning to agree with her. Learning to accept that I did deserve nice things. Dignity, comfort. Learning that letting people help wasn't weakness, but wisdom. The money had started coming back. Asset seizures, wage garnishment from Clara's prison work program, liquidation of luxury goods she'd bought with stolen funds. So far, about $300,000 had been recovered. Simone said we'd eventually get most of it, though it might take years. I'd already decided what to do with it. A third would go into savings, security I'd never had, protection against future disasters. A third would go to the Justice Fund, helping other victims. And the final third, I was still figuring that out. But Beatrice had suggested travel, and I was starting to think she might be right. When had I last gone somewhere just because I wanted to? Seen something beautiful, not for practical reasons, but just to see it? I couldn't remember. Maybe it was time to start. Marcus had moved back to Detroit a month ago, bought a condo downtown, and relocated his company's headquarters. His employees had mostly been fine with it. Remote work was common in tech anyway. And the ones who weren't, well, he'd helped them find other positions. "I'm not abandoning them the way I abandoned you," he'd said, when I'd questioned whether he was making too many changes too fast. "I'm restructuring so I can have balance, be a CEO and a human being. Turns out those don't have to be mutually exclusive." We had dinner together twice a week now, real dinners where we talked about more than surface things. He told me about therapy, about unpacking why he'd been so easy to manipulate, why he'd needed Clara's approval so desperately. I told him about the years after his father left, about working double shifts and pretending I wasn't exhausted, about the loneliness of widowhood I'd never admitted. We were learning each other, not as mother and son who existed in obligatory roles, but as people who'd chosen to rebuild something better from the wreckage. The Justice Fund had launched officially last month. June was running it. She'd retired from paralegal work anyway, and was thrilled to have purpose again. We'd already helped 4 elderly victims access forensic accountants and lawyers. 3 were family abuse cases like mine. 1 was a caregiver who'd been systematically draining an elderly couple's accounts for years. The response had been overwhelming. Calls from across Michigan, then neighboring states, then the country. Media coverage had made the fund nationally known, and donations were pouring in from people who'd experienced similar situations or just wanted to help. "You've started something important," Jennifer Martinez had told me at the fund's launch party. "This is going to help thousands of people. You turned your trauma into purpose." But the most surprising development was personal. A woman named Linda had reached out 2 weeks ago. She'd seen the news coverage, recognized Clara's name from law school. They'd been classmates, hadn't spoken in years. "I need to tell you something about Clara," Linda had said when we met for coffee, "something that might help you understand." So I'd listened to the story of Clara at 25, brilliant, ambitious, from a wealthy family that had lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis. How she'd gone from country clubs to food stamps overnight. How the humiliation had twisted something in her, made her desperate to reclaim status by any means necessary. "I'm not excusing what she did," Linda had said carefully, "but I wanted you to know it came from somewhere. Her cruelty wasn't random. It was someone trying to claw back power after feeling powerless. The information had complicated my feelings. I'd wanted Clara to be a monster. Simple, pure evil. Learning she was a damaged person who damaged others was harder. It didn't excuse anything, but it explained it. Made me understand that hurt people really do hurt people, and cycles of trauma keep spinning until someone chooses to stop. I'd chosen to stop mine. Taken the hurt Clara inflicted and transformed it into help for others instead of passing it forward. That felt like breaking a curse. Today was special. Beatrice was taking me to look at a travel agency. We were planning a trip. Me, her, Lorraine, June, Patricia, and Rosa. A cruise of all things. 2 weeks in the Caribbean, leaving in 6 months. "We've earned it," Beatrice had declared. 60-some years of working hard, raising families, doing the right thing. Time to do something ridiculous and wonderful. The travel agent's office was in a strip mall, modest and cheerful. The agent herself was a black woman about my age who lit up when Beatrice explained what we wanted. 6 women who've been through hell and back, wanting to celebrate life, the agent said. "I can work with that. What's your budget?" Beatrice and I exchanged glances. For the first time in 3 years, maybe the first time ever, I had a budget that wasn't desperate. Comfortable, not luxury, but not bottom tier either. We want to enjoy ourselves. For the next hour, we planned cruise ships and ports of call, excursions and activities. The agent showed us photos of turquoise water and white sand beaches, restaurants and shows, and all the things I'd only seen in magazines. "This one," I said, pointing to a cruise that stopped in Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and Cozumel. "When do we leave?" "March 15th, 12 nights. All 6 of you?" All 6 of us. When we left with deposit paid and brochures in hand, Beatrice squeezed my arm. "Can you believe it? We're going on a cruise." "I can barely believe I can afford groceries," I admitted. "A cruise seems like something that happens to other people." "You're other people now. You're Dorothy Hayes, who survived, who fought back, who built something beautiful from something terrible. You deserve this." Maybe I was starting to believe her. That evening, Marcus came by for dinner. I'd cooked, really cooked, not just heated something up, using the nice pots and pans he'd bought me, the spices I could now afford, the creativity I'd been too stressed to access for years. "Mom, this is incredible," he said around a mouthful of chicken. "I forgot you could cook like this." "I forgot, too." I admitted. Hard to be creative in the kitchen when you're counting every penny and eating the same 5 things on rotation. We ate, talked, laughed at something silly on TV. Normal family dinner, the kind I'd dreamed of during those years of silence. Then Marcus got serious. Mom, I want to talk to you about something. The company is doing really well. We're expanding, hiring, profitable beyond my projections. And I've been thinking about compensation structures, about how we reward the people who helped us get here, okay? You're on the board of the Justice Fund. You're its public face, doing media, helping victims, building something from nothing. That's work, Mom. Important work. You should be compensated for it. Marcus, I'm not doing it for money. I know. But that doesn't mean you should do it for free. The fund has a budget for administrative salaries. June is drawing one. You should too. He pulled out a folder. I talked to the fund's accountant. They can pay you $60,000 a year for 20 hours a week of work, which is less than you're doing anyway, but it makes it official. Gives you health insurance, retirement contributions, stability. $60,000 a year. More than I'd made teaching. For work that mattered, that helped people, that gave me purpose. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Let yourself be valued, Mom. Let yourself have security and dignity and the kind of life you've been giving everyone else. So I did. Said yes. Signed papers that made me officially employed by the organization bearing my name, helping people like me find just. After Marcus left, I sat on my renovated porch. New wood, comfortable chairs, paint that wasn't peeling, and watched the sun set over my neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson waved from her yard. The Santos kids played basketball down the street. Normal life continuing. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Dorothy Hayes, speaking. This is Warden Patricia Connolly from FCI Alderson. I'm calling about inmate Clara Hayes. My stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's fine, but she's asked to speak with you. She's not entitled to contact. You're the victim, but she's requested mediation through our restorative justice program. It would be facilitated, voluntary on your part, completely optional. Clara wanted to talk to me. After everything, she wanted to face me. What would it involve? A session with a trained mediator. Clara would have a chance to apologize, to take accountability face to face. You'd have a chance to ask questions, to tell her directly how her actions impacted you. It's not therapy, it's accountability. Some victims find it helpful for closure. I thought about it, about seeing Clara in prison, hearing her apologize directly instead of through court transcripts, about the possibility of real closure instead of just legal resolution. Can I think about it? Of course, take all the time you need. If you decide you're interested, call this number. She gave me a direct line. After we hung up, I sat with the question. Did I want to see Clara? To hear her explain? To give her the gift of my presence in her punishment? I didn't know, but I knew who would help me figure it out. I called Beatrice. Clara wants to meet with me. Prison mediation thing. Should I do it? Silence. Then, do you need to, or do you want to? I don't know. Maybe both, maybe neither. Then sit with it. You don't owe her anything, Dorothy. Not your time, not your forgiveness, not your understanding, but if you think it would help you, not her, but you, then consider it. Wise words. I'd sit with it. Maybe say yes, maybe say no, but either way, it would be my choice, my decision about my healing. That was power Clara couldn't steal. I went to bed that night in my beautiful house, in my new life, thinking about choices and consequences and the long road from victim to survivor to something beyond both. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer walking it in poverty and silence. I was walking it in sunlight, surrounded by family who'd chosen me as fiercely as I'd chosen them. And that made all the difference. I decided to meet with Clara, not for her. I was done doing things for her benefit, but for me, because there were questions only she could answer, truths only she could speak, and I realized I needed to hear them directly. The drive to FCI Alderson took 6 hours. Marcus offered to come, but I brought Beatrice instead. She understood in ways my son couldn't yet, understood what it meant to face your abuser with your dignity intact. The prison was modern, less intimidating than I'd expected. We went through security, signed paperwork, followed a guard to a small room with a table and chairs, and a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Karen Reese, the restorative justice mediator. Before we bring Clara in, I want to make sure you understand the process, Dr. Reese said. This is not about reconciliation or forgiveness. This is about accountability and truth. Clara will speak first. Then you'll have a chance to respond and ask questions. I'll facilitate, keep things productive. You can stop at any time. Understood? Understood. Beatrice squeezed my hand. I'll be right outside. You need me. You say the word. Then Clara entered. 4 months in prison had changed her. The polished veneer was gone. No makeup, no designer clothes, just a prison uniform and a face that looked older, harder, worn by consequences. She sat across from me, wouldn't meet my eyes at first. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." I kept my voice steady. "But I have questions that need answering." Dr. Reese nodded to Clara. "You asked for this meeting. What did you want to say?" Clara took a breath. "I'm sorry. I know that's inadequate, that it doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it to your face. Not in court where I had to, but here, because I chose to. Dorothy, I'm sorry for stealing from you, for making you suffer, for enjoying your poverty while I spent your money. I'm sorry for manipulating Marcus, for keeping you apart, for the years I took from both of you. I'm sorry." The words landed flat, rehearsed. I waited. "But more than that," Clara continued, "I need you to know why. Not to excuse it. There's no excuse. But Linda told me she talked to you, told you about my family's bankruptcy, about going from wealth to nothing overnight. She did. What she didn't tell you, what I've never told anyone, is that I watched my mother beg for help from family who'd always acted like they loved us, watched them turn their backs when we lost everything, watched her work 3 jobs to keep us fed while her own sister wore jewelry we'd given her for Christmas, bought with money she'd refused to lend us." Clara's voice shook. "I watched poverty destroy her dignity, her health, her will to live. She died when I was 27, stress-induced heart attack, because she couldn't afford her medication. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, too early for that, maybe never, but understanding. So when I saw you," Clara continued, "living in that house that was falling apart, stretching every dollar, wearing clothes that were worn out, I didn't see a person. I saw my mother, saw the poverty that killed her. And instead of helping, She stopped. "I wanted you to suffer the way she suffered. Like if I could control your poverty, I could retroactively control hers. Like making you dependent and desperate would somehow balance the scales of my mother's humiliation." "That's insane," I said flatly. "Yes, it is." She finally looked at me. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm telling you the truth because you deserve it. I hurt you deliberately, systematically, as punishment for a crime you didn't commit, and I'd probably still be doing it if I hadn't gotten caught." Dr. Reese leaned forward. "Dorothy, do you have questions for Clara?" I had hundreds, but I started with the most important one. "Did you ever love my son? Or was he just a means to an end?" Clara thought about it. "Both. I loved him in my broken way, loved his success, his stability, the life he offered. But I also used him, kept him isolated from you so he'd depend on me more, need me more, made myself indispensable by making you seem difficult. I manipulated him for 7 years, and he still doesn't know half of it. He's in therapy. Good. He should be. I damaged him too." She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. "I made him believe loving his mother was weakness, made him feel guilty for wanting family beyond just us, convinced him that success meant leaving everything else behind. Why tell me this? Why not let me believe the version from court, where you were just greedy? Because greedy is easier than honest. Greedy means I'm a monster you can dismiss. Honest means I'm a damaged person who damaged others, and that's harder to hate." She leaned forward. "You deserve the complicated truth, Dorothy. You're not a symbol or a victim or a story. You're a person I hurt on purpose because I was hurting. That's the truth I have to live with for 7 years in here, and the rest of my life outside." We sat in silence. Dr. Reese watched us both, reading dynamics I probably didn't fully understand myself. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "What outcome were you hoping for from this meeting?" "Nothing," Clara said. "I'm not hoping for forgiveness or absolution, or for you to tell me it's okay. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did, that I own it completely, that if I could undo it, I would, but I can't. So all I can do is tell you the truth and spend the rest of my life trying to be someone who wouldn't do this again. Will you succeed at being different? I don't know. I hope so. The alternative is that I did all this damage for nothing, learned nothing, and I'll get out and hurt someone else. That terrifies me more than the prison sentence." I looked at this woman who'd stolen from me, manipulated my son, enjoyed my suffering, looked at the brokenness in her that had broken me in turn. And I felt something I didn't expect. Pity, not forgiveness, not absolution. Just pity for someone so damaged they'd had to damage others to feel whole. "I appreciate you telling me the truth," I said slowly. "I appreciate knowing it came from somewhere, even if that somewhere doesn't excuse anything. But Clara, I don't forgive you. Maybe someday, but not today. Today I'm just glad you're here, and I'm free. That's as much grace as I can offer. She nodded. That's more than I deserve. The meeting ended shortly after. Dr. Reese walked me out, asked how I felt. Tired, I said honestly, but complete. Like I got the answers I needed, even if they weren't the answers I wanted. Beatrice was waiting in the lobby, reading a magazine. She looked up, saw my face, stood, and hugged me without words. On the drive home, I told her everything. About Clara's mother, about the twisted logic of her cruelty, about the truth that made her human instead of monstrous. Does it change anything? Beatrice asked. Knowing why? No, I said. She still stole from me, still made me suffer, still deserves every day of her sentence. But it makes it less personal somehow. Like I wasn't targeted because I was me, but because I represented something in her broken psyche. That's easier to release. You're a better woman than I am. I'd still want to throw something at her head. I laughed. I thought about it, but Dr. Reese was watching. We drove through the fading afternoon light, back toward Detroit and home. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. How did it go? I typed back, hard but necessary. Tell you about it over dinner tomorrow. His response, love you, Mom. 3 words that used to feel obligatory. Now they felt earned, chosen, real. You okay? Beatrice asked. Yeah, I said, and meant it. I think I actually am, because I'd faced Clara and survived, heard her truth without letting it diminish mine, given her the dignity of acknowledgement without giving away my own power. That was growth. Messy, complicated, imperfect growth, but growth nonetheless, and that felt like winning. The cruise departed on March 15th from Fort Lauderdale, and the 6 of us stood on the deck like schoolgirls on spring break, 70 years old combined, laughing at everything, taking selfies with champagne we'd paid for ourselves. To Dorothy, Beatrice raised her glass, who survived hell and came back with style. To all of us, I corrected, who proved that family is who shows up, not who shares your blood. We toasted, drank, watched the Florida coastline recede as the ship pulled away from dock. Behind us, real life waited, responsibilities, the Justice Fund, Marcus building his life, Clara serving her sentence. But for 12 days, none of that existed. Just 6 black women who'd earned every moment of joy they were about to have. Jamaica was beautiful, white sand beaches, turquoise water, music everywhere. We snorkeled. Lorraine complained the whole time but admitted later it was magical. We ate jerk chicken that made our eyes water. We bought souvenirs from vendors who called us auntie with affectionate respect. When's the last time someone called you beautiful? A man braiding hair on the beach asked me. I thought about it. I honestly can't remember. Then they're fools. You're stunning, sister. Wear it like you know it. I paid him to braid extensions into my hair, something I'd never have spent money on before, never thought I deserved. Sat for 3 hours while he worked magic, gossiped, told stories. When he finished, I barely recognized myself. The woman in the mirror looked vibrant, alive, proud. Now you look like you feel, Beatrice said approvingly. Free. Grand Cayman was snorkeling with stingrays. Terrifying and wonderful. June screamed when one brushed against her, then laughed until she cried. We took photos that would become proof we'd done something wild, something nobody expected from church ladies in their 60s and 70s. Cozumel was ruins and history, a guide who explained Mayan mathematics with passion that made ancient stones feel alive. We climbed pyramid steps that made our knees ache but our spirits soar. Can you believe we're here? Patricia asked at sunset on our last night, all of us on deck watching the ocean turn gold. Can you believe we actually did this? I couldn't. A year ago, I'd been borrowing money for groceries. Now I was on a cruise, hair freshly braided, wearing a dress I'd bought without checking the price tag first, surrounded by women who'd chosen to love me. Life is strange, I said, terrible and beautiful, and stranger than fiction. To strange lives, Rosa toasted, and to friends who make them bearable. We got home to snow and reality. The Justice Fund had helped 6 more people while I was gone. June had handled it beautifully. Marcus had closed a major deal and wanted to celebrate. The house was exactly as I'd left it, clean and warm and mine. Normal life resumed, but I was different. The cruise had reminded me that joy wasn't frivolous, that taking care of myself wasn't selfish, that I deserved to take up space and be seen and feel beautiful. I started teaching piano lessons, just a few students, kids from the neighborhood whose parents couldn't afford formal instruction, charged what they could pay, nothing when they couldn't, made music again after years of silence. Marcus met someone, a woman named Dr. Angela Thompson, a pediatrician, kind and real, and everything Clara hadn't been. He brought her to dinner after they'd been dating 3 months, nervous like a teenager. Mom, this is Angela. She was gorgeous, black, natural hair, warm smile, no pretense. We shook hands, and I saw in her eyes that she knew the whole story, had chosen Marcus anyway, and was prepared to earn her place in his life honestly. It's wonderful to finally meet you, Mrs. Hayes. Marcus talks about you constantly. Good things, I hope. True things, which mostly are good but also honest. I appreciate that. As she helped me set the table without being asked, made conversation that was real instead of performed, laughed at my jokes. After dinner, Marcus pulled me aside. What do you think? I think she's nothing like Clara, and that's the highest compliment I can give. He hugged me. I'm done choosing wrong, Mom. Done choosing image over substance. Angela's not perfect, but she's real. That's what matters. 6 months after the cruise, the Justice Fund held its first annual gala fundraiser. Black tie, downtown Detroit. 300 people paying $200 a plate to support elder financial abuse prevention. I gave a speech. Me, Dorothy Hayes, who a year ago couldn't afford to fix her roof, standing at a podium in a borrowed gown, talking about survival and justice and the power of community. A year ago, I discovered my daughter-in-law had been stealing from me for 3 years. I began. Stealing money my son thought he was sending. Stealing directly from my accounts, leaving me in poverty while she lived lavishly. I could have stayed silent, could have been grateful for whatever scraps I got. Instead, I got angry, and that anger, channeled properly, became this. I gestured to the room, to the fund that now helped hundreds of people, to the lawyers and accountants donating time, to the donors making it possible. Elder financial abuse happens in silence. Abusers depend on victims being too ashamed to speak, too afraid to act, too isolated to get help. We're breaking that silence. We're telling elderly people, you deserve dignity, you deserve security, you deserve justice, and we're going to help you get it. Standing ovation, 300 people on their feet, applauding not just me, but the idea that poverty and age didn't equal powerlessness. Afterward, dozens of people approached with stories, their grandmother, their father, themselves. Financial abuse hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to shine a light on it. You've started something important, Jennifer Martinez said. She'd come as a supporter, brought colleagues from the U.S. Attorney's Office. This is going to change lives. It already has, I said, thinking of the people we'd helped, the families we'd reunited, the justice we'd secured. Marcus found me near the end of the night, Angela beside him. Mom, Angela and I have something to tell you. My heart jumped. You're engaged? Yes, but also, Angela smiled, put her hand on her stomach. We're having a baby. You're going to be a grandmother, for real this time, not just in photos. I started crying before I could stop myself. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears for the future that looked nothing like the past I'd survived. When? I managed. September. We're thinking Dorothy for a girl, after you, if you'd be okay with that. I hugged them both, held on tight, and thought about how much could change in a year. From poverty and betrayal to this, family rebuilding, life beginning, joy earned through survival. Clara had tried to erase me. Instead, she'd freed me, forced me to find strength I didn't know I had, build community I'd always needed, demand justice I'd always deserved. That was the ultimate irony. Her worst intention had become my greatest liberation. I'm honored, I whispered, so deeply honored. That night, lying in my comfortable bed in my renovated house, I thought about the year I'd survived, about Mother's Day and $10,000 that never came, about Clara's arrest and allocution and 7 years of consequences, about cruises and speeches and piano lessons and family rebuilt from honesty instead of obligation, about how rock bottom had been the foundation I'd built everything better on. My phone buzzed. Text from Beatrice. You were magnificent tonight. Proud doesn't cover it. I smiled. Typed back, we were magnificent. None of this happens without you. Her response, none of this happens without you choosing to fight. We just gave you the tools. You did the work. Maybe we were both right. Maybe survival was always collaborative. Part personal strength, part communal support, part stubborn refusal to let cruelty win. I fell asleep thinking about September, about holding a grandchild who'd know her grandmother as strong instead of desperate, about the life I was building that looked nothing like the one Clara had tried to destroy. The money that never came had taught me something more valuable than money ever could. I was enough. With or without it, with or without anyone's approval, I was enough. And that truth, earned in fire and forged in struggle, was mine forever. Baby Dorothy. Angela Hayes arrived on September 23rd, screaming her displeasure at the world with lungs that promised she'd never be silent, never be ignored, never accept less than she deserved. She gets that from her grandmother, Marcus said, watching me hold her for the first time. This tiny, perfect human who carried my name and my legacy forward. Good, I said. The world needs more women who know how to yell. Angela, exhausted but glowing, reached for my hand. Thank you. For raising a man capable of growth, for showing him what real strength looks like. This baby is lucky to have you. I spent that first week helping, cooking meals, holding the baby so they could sleep, being present in ways I'd never gotten to be with Clara's boundaries. Marcus's house became mine too, in the best way, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I was wanted, valued, included. At 2 weeks old, baby Dorothy met her extended family, Beatrice, Lorraine, June, Patricia, Rosa, and Marjorie, who'd all insisted on coming together. 6 elderly black women passing around a newborn, telling stories, offering advice, creating the web of community that would catch this child the way they'd caught me. She's perfect, Beatrice declared, and she's going to grow up knowing she comes from a line of strong women who don't quit. She's going to grow up with a trust fund, Marcus added. College paid for, security built in, never having to worry the way Mom worried. She's going to grow up knowing money isn't strength, I corrected gently. Community is, purpose is, refusing to be broken is, the rest is just tools. The Justice Fund continued growing. We'd helped over 200 people in the first year, recovered millions in stolen assets, gotten 12 abusers convicted. The work was exhausting and rewarding, and everything I'd been meant to do with my life after teaching. Clara came up for parole after serving 3 years. I was notified, asked if I wanted to submit a statement. I thought about it for days, finally wrote something short. Clara Hayes stole from me, yes, but more than that, she stole my sense of security, my relationship with my son, years I can't get back. She served her time as required by law. Whether she's learned from it, whether she's genuinely changed, that's not mine to determine. I hope she has. I hope she never hurts anyone again. But my forgiveness isn't required for her parole, and I'm not ready to give it. Justice was served. That's enough. She was denied parole, would serve the full 7 years. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not anger, just the distant acknowledgement that consequences continued whether I paid attention or not. Marcus's company went public 18 months after baby Dorothy was born. The IPO made him genuinely wealthy, not California tech bro wealthy, but comfortable beyond anything we'd imagined. He immediately established a foundation dedicated to elder care and abuse prevention, seeded with $10 million. This is your legacy, Mom, he said at the press conference announcing it, the Dorothy Hayes Foundation, making sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else who can't fight back. I sat in the audience, holding my granddaughter, watching my son transform trauma into purpose, and felt the strange completeness of full-circle moments. We'd started with money that never came, and ended with money deployed to prevent that absence from breaking anyone else. On the 2-year anniversary of that Mother's Day when everything changed, I hosted dinner at my house. Marcus, Angela, baby Dorothy, now a walking, talking tornado of opinion. My church ladies, Mrs. Patterson from across the street, the Santos kids who I'd been teaching piano, a full house, loud and chaotic and perfect. Speech, Beatrice demanded, tapping her glass. I'm not making a speech at my own dinner party. Speech! Speech! Everyone joined in until I stood, laughing, surrendering. Fine, a short one. I looked around at faces I loved, lives that had intersected with mine in ways both terrible and beautiful. 2 years ago today, my son asked me if I was happy with the money Clara had been sending. That question destroyed my illusions and rebuilt my life. I lost my ignorance, but gained my power. Lost my daughter-in-law, but gained my son back. Lost my poverty, but gained my purpose. I picked up baby Dorothy, who reached for my braids immediately. This child will grow up knowing her grandmother as someone who fought back, who turned theft into justice, trauma into community, victimhood into advocacy. She'll know that we don't have to accept what's done to us. We can demand better and build it when it doesn't come. To Dorothy, Marcus raised his glass. Both of them. To Dorothy, everyone echoed. After dinner, after guests had left, after baby Dorothy had been taken home for bedtime, I sat on my porch with tea and silence and thought about the journey. From borrowed money to cruise ships, from broken furnaces to renovation, from silence to speeches, from victim to survivor, to advocate to grandmother passing strength forward. Clara had tried to keep me small, poor, manageable. Instead, she'd forced me to become larger, louder, impossible to ignore. That was the greatest revenge, not her 7 years in prison, but my thriving in the world she'd tried to steal from me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then answered. Mrs. Hayes? This is Corrections Officer Davis from FCI Alderson. I'm calling because inmate Clara Hayes asked me to pass along a message. She's not allowed direct contact, but she wanted you to know she saw the article about the foundation, about what you and your son built. She said, a pause. She said, thank you for turning her crime into something good, for proving that damage doesn't have to be permanent. I sat with that for a long moment. Tell her. What? That I forgave her? I didn't. Not completely. That I hoped she'd changed? I did, but distantly. Tell her I hope she finds peace. Real peace, the kind that doesn't require hurting others. I'll tell her. And Mrs. Hayes, what you've built is remarkable. My mother was financially abused by her caregiver last year. Your fund helped us get justice and recovery. So thank you, from all of us who've been touched by this work. After we hung up, I sat in the dark thinking about ripples. How one crime had touched hundreds of lives, some damaged, some healed, all change. How Clara's theft had paradoxically funded, through recovered assets and attention drawn, a movement that would help thousands. How the worst thing that happened to me had become the best thing I'd done with my life. That wasn't forgiveness. That wasn't saying Clara's crime was acceptable or necessary. But it was acknowledging that we're all just people stumbling through, trying to find meaning in chaos, hoping the damage we do can somehow be transmuted into healing. I went to bed that night thinking about baby Dorothy, about the world she'd inherit, a world where her grandmother was known not as a victim, but as a fighter, where family was redefined through choice and presence, where money was a tool, but community was the true wealth. The money that never came had taught me everything that mattered, and the life I'd built from its absence was richer than any amount Clara could have stolen. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd transformed, had taken betrayal and forged justice, had taken isolation and built community, had taken the worst of humanity and responded with the best of my own. That was the legacy I'd leave baby Dorothy. Not money, though Marcus's foundation ensured she'd never want, but the knowledge that women in our family don't break. We bend, we rebuild, we demand better, we create it when it doesn't exist. Clara had tried to erase me from my own life. Instead, she'd freed me to live it more fully than I'd ever imagined. And that was the sweetest justice of all. I fell asleep in my paid-off house, in my community, in my life built from ashes and anger, and the absolute refusal to stay down when pushed. The money that never came had finally arrived, not as deposits in an account, but as dignity, purpose, family, and the unshakable knowledge that I was enough. With or without it, I'd always been enough. I just finally knew it now, and that knowing was worth more than Clara could ever steal. Thank you very much for watching. Share with those who also like stories, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you liked my story. Cheers.